Hello, I hope you're well today. My name is Nick and I create content through Narrow Way Ministries. You can like, subscribe and share through all the channels to get more access to content like this. I cannot believe that we are so close to Easter for another year, and it really doesn't get any more significant than Easter when it comes to our faith and what that means for our lives as followers of Jesus. As we count down to Easter, I would like to watch with you some snippets from a few videos that I have come across that talk about the archaeological evidence of the crucifixion of Jesus, in that there are places around the world that document things that align with the crucifixion of Jesus, places that you would not expect, far away from Jerusalem. So let's get started today as we talk about ancient China. Now, I have actually talked a little bit about ancient China before in terms of some potential evidence of possibly Chinese magi traveling from ancient China to Judea to see the baby Jesus. And I can share those links to you in the description below. It will talk a little bit about that in this video as well, but it will also talk about the evidence that suspects that the ancient Chinese were aware of the crucifixion of Jesus. Let's get into it and watch more. Now, these videos that we'll explore as we count down to Easter come from a YouTube channel called Christian Way. I will post the link to the original video in the description below. Full credit to them for making these videos.
For 2,000 years, historians and skeptics have asked Christians a hard, almost embarrassing question. If the sky truly went dark over the whole land when Jesus died, why did no one mention it outside the Bible? Where is the historical proof? If it really happened, shouldn't the great empires of the time, Rome, Egypt, China, have recorded it? The answer is yes, they did.
That already piques my attention because that is a valid question that I hear people that are skeptical of the crucifixion of Jesus ask.
But the evidence remained buried for centuries in an imperial archive 7,000 kilometers from Jerusalem. In this video, I won't be telling you legends. We're about to open together the annals of the Han Dynasty, official government documents. You will discover that ancient Chinese astronomers not only saw the Star of Bethlehem, but recorded minute by minute the exact moment Jesus died on the cross.
One thing I have discovered through my own reading in different books at times is that the ancient Chinese actually were very good record keepers. They kept quite detailed accounts of things. So yeah, I think it's really interesting that this is coming out.
And what their emperor wrote that day without ever reading a page of the Bible is one of the most shocking prophecies in human history. To understand how the Chinese could recognize the death of Jesus, we first need to shatter a huge myth. We are used to thinking of ancient China as a land of dragons, Buddha statues, and thousands of pagan gods. But if we go back in time, before Buddhism, before Taoism, we discover a truth that school books often leave out. For over 4,000 years, China was monotheistic. They worshipped one god. They called him Shangdi.
I have read this, and as I said, I've shared stuff about this before in previous content that I've made. That is true. They worshipped the god Shangdi, and there's actually, from what they can see, the beginning of ancient Chinese records exists from around the date that Abraham would have existed, which would have made sense because if you think about the events of the Tower of Babel and how the nations were scattered and the people spread out around the world, that would make sense in terms of the timing of a civilization rising up in ancient China. And at the time of Babel, idolatry wasn't a thing. People knew Yahweh as God. So it totally makes sense that they would take that belief in Yahweh, in God, or Shangdi as they called him in their language, with them. In fact, modern Chinese Bibles today use the word Shangdi to name God. Anyhow, let's continue.
Which literally means the supreme emperor of heaven, the sovereign above all, who has no form, who is spirit. The proof of this still stands today in the heart of Beijing, the Temple of Heaven. It's one of the architectural wonders of the world. But have you ever noticed what's inside? Nothing. There's no statue, no golden idol, no painting. Why? Because Shangdi was considered too great to be represented by human hands, exactly like the God of Israel who told Moses, "You shall not make for yourself any carved image." But there's an even more incredible detail. Once a year, the Emperor of China had to purify himself and perform a sacred rite called the border sacrifice. What did he sacrifice? A flawless bull. And as the blood was poured out, ancient prayers were recited that said, "You created the heavens, the earth, and all things. You reign over all." Think about that for a moment.
I have read that before in my own reading of books too. It's fascinating.
A temple with no idols, a creator god, a blood sacrifice of a perfect bull for the forgiveness of sins. It sounds like you're reading the book of Leviticus in the Old Testament. Ancient Chinese people had preserved the memory of the god of Noah. They knew that sin demands a price of blood, and it is precisely because they knew the father, Shangdi, that they were able to recognize the signs of the son's death. But before we reach the astronomical evidence, there is an even deeper proof, one that every Chinese person uses every day without realizing it. The story of the Bible is hidden in their writing. Chinese characters are not letters like ours. They are conceptual drawings. And the oldest concepts tell Genesis in a shocking way. Look at these 3 examples. The character for vessel or ship is composed of 8 and mouth, meaning person. So, a vessel with 8 people. Why 8? If China didn't know the Bible, why does the ancient word for ship contain the exact number of passengers on Noah's Ark? Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives. But it doesn't stop there. The word for temptation, or devil, M-O, is astonishing. It is formed by tree plus cover plus 2 people plus devil. 2 people under the cover of a tree with the devil. It's an exact snapshot of the Garden of Eden. And now,
isn't that incredible that, they brought that with them. It still exists today. So amazing.
Now the last one, my favorite. The character for righteousness, Yai. On top is the symbol for lamb. Below is the symbol for I, meaning myself. For ancient Chinese people, to be righteous literally means when the lamb is above me, when the lamb covers me. This is pure Christian theology. I am not righteous by my works. I am righteous only if the Lamb of God covers me. Do you see it now? The ground was prepared. God had left his fingerprints in their culture. And now, let's look at what happened when God decided to come down to earth. Now, we move from archaeology to astronomy. We have to open the imperial archives. But can we trust these documents? Are they accurate? You need to know this. In ancient China, astronomy was not a hobby. It was a matter of state. The emperor based his authority on the mandate of heaven. There was an imperial department of astronomy with hundreds of scholars who watched the sky 24 hours a day. They were obsessive. They recorded Halley's Comet centuries before Europeans. They recorded supernovas that the West ignored, and there was a grim detail. Mistakes were punished by death.
It's so fascinating that, and I think sometimes in our Western modern culture, we can just assume that any studying of the stars is astrology and bad. This might be another can of worms, but I believe that often there are things the way God intended, and then the enemy can create a copy, an inferior copy that's actually not of God. But I actually believe that God speaks through creation, and he created the heavens. It talks about in the scriptures that God reveals himself through his creation. Romans 1 talks about that all people are without excuse because of the way that God reveals himself through creation. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist of what it's saying. And so I really do believe that there is a form of astronomy, studying the stars, that is of God. And I believe the ancient Chinese culture had a really good grasp on what that meant and what that looked like, as documented by their records that many people can still access today.
If an astronomer missed an eclipse or got a prediction wrong, he could be executed. So when we read something in their records, we know 2 things. They truly saw it, and they checked it 1,000 times before writing it down. That's why what you're about to hear has immense historical value. Let's begin around 5 BC, the period when most historians placed the birth of Christ. The Gospel of Matthew tells us that Magi came from the east following a star. Many skeptics say, it's a fairy tale. No one saw that star. Really? In the Annals of the Han Dynasty, in the volume devoted to astronomy, there is a dry, precise note. In the second year of the Jianping period, second month, a Huixing star, a comet or a nova, appeared near Altair. The text says it remained visible for more than 70 days. That is exactly the time a slow caravan would need to travel from Persia or from the edges of China to Jerusalem. While Bethlehem slept unaware, on the other side of the world, astronomers were tracing the signal that the king of the universe had arrived. But if the birth was a sign of hope, the death was a sign of cosmic terror. We now reach the heart of the mystery. It is the year 33 AD, or 31 AD, according to some calculations. The month of April. In Jerusalem, it is noon. Jesus has just been lifted up on the cross. The Gospels say, darkness came over all the land until 3 in the afternoon. Here, we need to stop and do some science, because this is where skeptics attack. They say, impossible. Jesus died at Passover. Jewish Passover always falls at full moon, and during a full moon, there cannot be a solar eclipse. They are right. In a normal solar eclipse, the moon passes between the Earth and the Sun, but at Passover, the moon is behind the Earth. So, astronomically, an eclipse that day is impossible. It cannot happen. And yet, listen to what Chinese astronomers wrote on that very day. An official document, the Chronicle of Emperor Guangwu, Day of Guihai. Eclipse on the day of Guihai. The sun was eclipsed. The sun and the moon were veiled together. Heaven and earth became dark as ink. Did you notice it? The sun and the moon were veiled together. Chinese astronomers knew how to recognize an eclipse. This terrified them because it made no sense. It wasn't the moon covering the sun. It was a supernatural darkness.
That's really interesting because from the little that I understand about the universe and how it operates, is that there is a real sense of order to things that you can predict. We can predict the phases of the moon. We can predict when an eclipse is going to hit certain places because we understand the order of how things work. But this fell outside the realm of what was the natural order of things. So it was something that would have really got their attention, and it would have been quite terrifying to witness that.
Thick, inexplicable, that swallowed the world at noon. The universe itself was reacting to the death of its creator, but the most incredible part is still to come. Emperor Guangwu was a pragmatic, powerful man, but that darkness frightened him to the core. In Chinese culture, such an event meant heaven was angry. Usually, the emperor would shift the blame onto his ministers, but read what he wrote in an official decree to calm the population. Yin and yang have wrongly exchanged. The sun and the moon have been obscured. The sins of all the people are now on the head of one man. The emperor proclaims forgiveness to all under heaven.
So interesting and fascinating to me that they already associated an eclipse or darkness as the heavens are angry. And that's exactly what what God was doing as Jesus was hanging on the cross. He was pouring out his anger on the one who could actually make that sacrifice on our behalf. So there was a connection to that, and they knew already that connection. It's just mind-blowing.
Read it again with me. The sins of all the people are on the head of one man. How could he know? In Jerusalem, at that same moment, Jesus was bearing the sins of the world. In Beijing, a pagan emperor, moved by God without realizing it, was writing the perfect theological explanation of the cross. And what did he do immediately afterward? He proclaimed an amnesty, a general pardon. Why? Because he sensed that to appease heaven's wrath, a price had been paid. It is moving to think that while the disciples fled in fear, God was using an emperor on the other side of the world to testify to the truth. But the story doesn't end here. 3 days later, exactly 3 days. In the annals, under the entry day of Bingyin, we find another strange note. The astronomers recorded a radiant halo, like a rainbow surrounding the sun. For ancient Chinese people, a solar halo carried deep meaning. It represented reconciliation between heaven and earth. It represented a new, glorious era. 3 days after the death, the tomb in Jerusalem was empty. And in China, the sun was shining with a sign of reconciliation. Shangdi had accepted the sacrifice. Death had been defeated. Today, Christianity in China is exploding. It is estimated that there are over 100 million Christians, more than the members of the Communist Party. The government tries to stop them, burns crosses, arrests pastors. But do you know what many of these new believers say? They say, "We are not becoming Western. We are coming home. We are returning to the faith of our ancestors. Our emperors knew, our language testifies, our stars saw it. The story of Jesus is written in the DNA of China.
As I reflect on what we've just watched, I think some things that are standing out to me is the fact that, we read through the scriptures of the way that God worked through the nation of Israel, and it's amazing what he did through the nation of Israel. But what we often forget to think about is the fact that God is at work throughout all of the earth and all of history, because he desires that all know him. Yes, the Israelites, the Jews, were his chosen nation that he chose to bring Christ into the world through, but he did it because he loves everyone. He loves the entire world, and he wants all to come to know him, and he will reveal himself in whatever way people are able to receive him. In Scripture, it talks about when we seek him, we will find him. When we draw near to him, he will draw near to us. And what we see is evidence of the ancient Chinese culture reaching out to God, wanting to know him, wanting to know what he's saying in their lives. And as they were doing that, he was revealing himself to them. He was revealing his son to them. It's pretty incredible. And so I hope that as we count down to Easter, these reflections will encourage you, that they will fill you with a deeper sense of awe and wonder in who our God is and how he works in our world, and remind you of just the absolute significance of what Jesus has done for us on the cross back in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago.